Hello, this is That Rob Human, and this is part 17 of my Tabletop Playground mod series. This episode, I'll come in again. This is That Rob Human, and this is episode 17 of my Tabletop Playground mod series. That's staying in the edit. Quote, edit, I just record and ramble. In this episode, we're going to talk about turns, rounds, and phases, and things that, increments for the progression of your game. Most games have a concept of a turn. 9 times out of 10, unless you have a somewhat complicated turn structure, the default setup will work for you. It automatically has a turn round system where the number of turns in a round is dependent on the number of players, and there's only ever one phase. To start with, I'm going to mention here that a round is the biggest time interval unit. A round can constitute one or more phases. There is a default phase already there, and then multiple turns, which is the individual actions of players, or individual priorities of players, constitute a phase. So you can have a turn or a round with one or more phases, and then a phase has a turn per player, ostensibly. We'll get into some of the exceptions on that and how you can play around with that a little bit more as we play with this. So I'm going to, as always, go into our package here, and I'm going to load up our starting state because that's what I want to modify here. And I'm going to right click and go to session options. And I'm going to click on this little phases bit. Now, like I said, the default phase is implied. So, there is a generic phase by default. But I can add my own phase here. So, like, for example, I can say this is action phase. And I can have it so that, just as a tooltip says here, so each player takes their turn sequentially. And I can restrict which players are able to do this. So like if I don't know, suppose I were doing a D&D game, and I wanted to have it so that, you had your player phase and your DM phase, for example. I know D&D doesn't actually work that way, but like, I don't know, I'm stretching for an example here. So I could actually do player phase, and I'm going to say black is going to be my DM color, so I'll just uncheck that, and then I'll just make a copy of that and do DM phase, and uncheck all of these. I do wish there were a way to uncheck all of them, and turn that on. And so taking turns doesn't really make sense for this one because there's only one turn, but why not? And I'll say, yeah, that takes turn. And this checkbox basically means that only the player whose turn it is will be able to interact with stuff. I usually leave that turned off. You might want to do it for like a DM phase where players can't futz with stuff, what have you. To use this as an example, if I had 3 players plus a DM, red, green, blue, and black, the first round would start in the player phase, starting with blue. That would be their turn, and then, when they say turn done, it would jump to green player's turn, and then when they're done with their turn, it would jump to red player's turn. And when they're done, it would then shift into the next phase. And since the next phase only has the black player active, the black player's turn would be that. And then when they're done, the round ends and the round comes again, starting from the top. So again, it would become blue player's turn of the player phase. This is fairly useful and probably should cover a couple, most of your use cases in terms of players. You could also do, there's nothing to say that you need to do like you could. There's nothing to say that you can't have more than one phase that includes players as a whole. So like, and you could do like. Oh, hey. I don't know why I can't. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's a bug. I'll mention that. So I could have two different phases where, each player takes all their turns, and then Resolve has everyone available to do their thing. And you can also lock objects depending on phase by doing action listeners and scripting and all that stuff. It's pretty damn powerful. The only thing that I know that you cannot do that I remember, and actually, let me check the documentation real quick just to make sure that hasn't changed. Yep, I was right. The only thing that you can't change in terms of this is, from a scripting standpoint, is the order in which the players take their turn. There is a bit of a workaround there that you can implement using the event system. In fact, if I actually go to the API documentation here, you can actually hook into the turn system.onTurnChanged event, and that will return, what is the previous turn, the previous phase, and the previous round, and then you can also get the current data during that event. So like, you can keep track of what the old turn was, what's the new turn. Well, if those are the same, then you're still on the same turn, but you might have moved to a different phase or a different round or whatever. You can totally do the math on that. In point of fact, I will probably be adding a helper function to handle a lot of the math there to the common lib project. Regardless, next episode I'll probably get into the playing with the intricacies of this API and how you can leverage that to create phases dynamically and adjust to user input. So like, for example, if your game has a pass function where once they pass they can't participate in a phase again, you can do that by way of scripting. So you can like create another phase on the fly with that user removed or things like that, and I'll get into that in the next episode where I dive into that a little bit more. As I said, as I understand it, there's no way to change the order of turns within a phase. I don't know if that's planned or anything, but there is a workaround where you can create single turn phases on the fly. So if you really need to play with the order of things, you can get around it that way, but that's really the best way to do it for now. Anyways, we'll dive into the scripting stuff and how to listen to that event handler and all that, and get really complicated with your phasing in the next episode. For now, I'll catch you next time.